So I'm going to continue to read How We Learn by Benedict Carey. And one of the things I've realized thus far is that I don't really have a good relationship with my brain. I don't think of it as a trusted friend and a partner in helping me to make sense of the world and have different experiences. And, at times I could, so far as to say that I've ignored it or even abused it. And the times that I have kind of listened to my brain and realized that it was trying to tell me the best way to do a specific thing, it's always been a positive experience for me. Now that I'm going through this book, and I'm reading How Best to Learn, I'm starting to really pay attention to how it works, and I'm realizing that this partner, this friend, is a very mysterious friend, but it's always there to help you in trying to make sense of the world. And if you just communicate with it a little bit better and deepen that relationship and get to know how it works and how this partner thinks and how it takes in information, and it's how it uses intuition and how it leverages information. If you establish that relationship and really get to know this person intimately, then it will be a win-win for both of you. So naturally, I think any psychology book that talks about learning is going to start with the basic introductory neuroscience of how the brain works and talk about the structure. And I think he quotes about something about us having 100 billion neurons. I did read an article the other day that neuroscientists recently have been able to measure or count how many neurons we actually have, and they came up with the number of 86 billion. Now, 86 billion, 100 billion, to me, it doesn't really make any difference. I don't really understand the implications of us losing 14 billion neurons overnight, but in any case, if you really don't establish that connection and that relationship and deepen that relationship, then it doesn't really matter how many neurons you have. But I think what is more important, though, is the connections among all of these billions of neurons. When you think about how each neuron can have thousands, tens of thousands of connections with other neurons, you're talking about up to 100 trillion connections. This massive universe, just a web of intertwining connections that are all there for a specific job, trying to help you make sense of the world. So one of the first things the book starts to talk about is how the brain has specific modules and specific parts that do specific things, and that each of these different parts of the brain kind of work together in unison to construct a narrative that you can use and leverage and understand the world and adapt to it. So each part of the brain has specific neurons that are designed to activate or fire with other neurons to make sense of particular parts of your experience or particular parts of your environment. And it's not a coincidence that the specific type of experience that you have is directly associated to the specific module within the brain that takes in that type of information. So if you have an experience that's mostly auditory, like you listen to a piece of music or you listen to your favorite song, you're going to have a memory of it, and that memory resides in that particular part of the brain that's associated to taking in information about sound. And Benedict Carey goes through the history of all the different scientific discoveries and all the different experiments that led scientists to believe that your brain has specific modules, and your memory resides in specific areas. It's not diffused throughout your entire brain. It's a fascinating read to hear him talk about all of these different parts of the brain and how scientists have figured out that there are specific neurons for specific types of memory, and there could be they say there's hundreds, thousands of these different parts of the brain that are taking in specific, just one little detail about your environment. if you're talking to somebody, like there could be a part of the brain, a specific module that takes in the light, or a specific module that takes in their skin tone, or the specific module that takes in their facial expressions, or their tone of voice, or their body language, their mannerisms, their hair color. They all fire and connect together, and essentially giving you a memory of the experience. And kind of describing how the brain works, like Benedict Carey uses the metaphor of like a film crew, and he talks about the different employees that are required to construct a film and make a movie, and the director like getting everything together and really having that vision, and the sound guy and all that. But I like to use the metaphor of a kind of a corporation, like a massive business, right? And this business, its sole design, its goal is to give you information accurately, and also to give you information accurately, and to also help you make sense of that information, interpret it, and then use it for later use to adapt to new environments. That's the sole goal. That's the value of that corporation. And if you can imagine a corporation having 86 billion employees, every single employee is a specialist in some particular part in giving specific information to management. The goal is to have as many employees focus on the specific experience, interpret that specific experience, take data on it, and then somehow talk to each other, talk among one another as much as you possibly can. Like that's how this business succeeds, is that you have more employees looking at more things and having more employees talk to one another as much as you possibly can. And then essentially all of them get together in a group and talk about specific things, and you somehow can strengthen that connection. The more these employees talk to each other, the more they understand each other, they understand how they think, and that connection between those employees gets stronger. And that connection, in biological terms, are the synapses. Now, whenever you have an experience, you want that experience to be as vivid as you possibly can. So you need as many employees as you possibly can. Once that experience goes away and you try to recall it or retrieve it later, it's essentially like when management brings in all the employees and asks what happened, can you give me some information? Or they have a specific meeting and there's PowerPoint slides and all kinds of stuff, but you're essentially getting all the employees that saw or focused on that experience. You get them all together, and they start to kind of communicate with each other as to what happened. And then the management crew gets to decide whether this event was a good thing or not, and how it could be used for later use to adapt to new environments. That's how I kind of tend to think about it. And I kind of, anytime I'm learning something, I want to have as many employees, use as many neurons as I possibly can. And that requires seeing that thing or experiencing that specific thing in as many ways as you possibly can. And that's not always easy to do, especially one of those people that studies math. I'm one of those people that loves math. I like the difficulty of it. Like I run towards the fact that it's difficult. I find easy math really boring, and it just becomes this sort of thing of like calculation. So as a person who tries to understand like really abstract things like mathematics, I can't really use anything to understand mathematics except using metaphors and comparison and trying to make sense of it as much as I can with the real world. I'm starting to understand from this book as to why metaphors are so valuable, because you're essentially taking something that's unknown, like let's say a piece of like abstract mathematics, and then you're tying it to something that you do know very well. And when you do that, you hijack all of those neural connections about the things that you do know. You hijack all those connections to leverage it and tie it to the things that you don't know. And that's such a powerful thing. Most of us don't really know anything about neurons or synapses, but if I can construct a metaphor about a business or a corporation, people understand employees, they understand management, they understand how one is there to evaluate situations, and then one set of a group is there to just take in data. You have your employees that are all specialists and they all do specific things, but they don't really know the bigger picture the way management does. And I feel like your brain kind of works the same way.